Hi, and welcome to the Rare Business Podcast. My name is Adrian Swinsko, and I'm a consultant, advisor, researcher, and writer on all things related to customer service and customer experience. Through this podcast, I seek out and interview CEOs, entrepreneurs, business and tech leaders, and leading thinkers about what it takes to build organizations that produce better outcomes for both customers and employees in this fast-moving modern age that we live in. If this is your first time listening to one of these interviews, then welcome, and please do dive into the archives at adrianswinsco.com, as I've now completed over 250 of these interviews in the last few years. If this is not your first time listening, then thank you for returning, and I'll aim to do a good enough job to keep you coming back week after week. Anyway, that's enough from me right now. Let's get into the interview. So, welcome to the next edition of the Rare Business Podcast. With me today I have Nikki Gatenby, who is the MD of Propellernet and author of a new book called Superengaged. Hi Nikki, how are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you very much. How are you?
You're very welcome. Now, so Nikki, can you, for the benefit of our listeners and readers, can you tell us a little bit about you and a bit about the work that you do?
Absolutely. So, in my role as MD of Propellernet, we're a digital marketing agency based in Brighton. We operate globally. I have a real love of travel and experiencing new cultures, and luckily for me, my work in marketing is taking me all over the world. So, whilst operating mainly out of London, Paris, and now Brighton, I'm now here in Propellernet and pushing the boundaries of what we can do within culture at work. The agency itself has its roots in search marketing, and our main objective is to enable brands that we work with to be found online and create measurable business success. So search is a backbone of everything we do, and we're sitting on a mountain of anonymised customer data based on Google searches, the millions of Google searches that happen around the world every day, and we know what people want. We have a deep insight to know what their customers are looking for and the ability to help brands be answers to those searches. So that's what we do. The how we do it is more important though, and we've consistently been ranked in the top 15 Great Places to Work awards in the last 6 years, and we're voted on the top 5 medium companies and campaigns best places to work. So we've kind of become known for our culture around inclusion, personal responsibility and creative freedom, and been showcased in various places for that. And our culture is one of the reasons we do great work for our clients and win accolades and awards and business success for them.
Perfect. And hence, I guess, the subject of the interview, you've actually written a book about it called Superengaged. I mean, can you tell us a little bit about the book and also kind of, I mean, the book is called Superengaged, How to Transform Business Performance by Putting People and Purpose First. So can you tell us about the book? I mean, and have you written the book because you've become known for your culture and so many people end up asking you about what you do and how you do it, and you thought, actually, why don't we just turn all these FAQs that we, in many ways, into a book? You know.
Pretty interesting, yes. I get asked to talk a lot about our culture because people are fascinated about some of the things that we do. And over the years, I've been standing on stages, holding the microphone and sharing the story of how we took the agency from the start to a world-class player. And people have constantly asked me where they can find out more and have I written a book and would I write a book. And until recently, I just said to them, I'm too busy to write a book. What I actually meant was I'm too terrified to write a book.
Yeah, sure.
So, it's one of those things, you know, every one of us is supposed to have a book in us. It's just finding it and having the time and attention to play to writing it. But a really lovely thing happened. I went out to a conscious business event in the Alps last year, and I was chatting about Propellernet to a colleague out there, someone who hadn't really had much to do with our business and our culture. And our mission is to make life better. And he said to me, well, if you really want to make life better, you've got to write a book about what you do because you're making life better at work for your team. You want the ripple effect of that to go beyond the agency.
Yes.
And he said, you've got to be living your vision. If you're going to live your vision, you really need to be writing the book. And I thought, you've got me. Now I've got to write it, haven't I?
Yeah, you're like going, damn it.
Yeah, exactly. He gave me the impetus to do it, but I'm so glad he did. And a guy called Naveen, he's brilliant. He runs an amazing startup business. He gave me such encouragement. I thought, you know what, I'll just bite the bullet and do it. But it's been quite a journey, and there's a lot of I've learned about myself as well as the book writing process in doing it. But the book itself is a really honest, in-depth but relatively upbeat look at the value of having values and the power of being people-focused. It's got lots of hints and tips. We've been referring to it as a rough guide for other people to use and dip in and out of as they see fit. So CEOs, CLOs, HR directors, finance directors, entrepreneurs, business owners, anyone who wants to develop their culture, But the reason for the payoff line around, people, profit and purpose is a lot of people think culture comes at the expense of profit. It's actually the other way around. The more engaged people are, the better work they'll do, the performance will go up.
Yes.
As will your margins. And I fundamentally believe that. I've seen it happen time and time again, and culture is our strategy, is how we run our business.
Yeah. So, I mean, well, absolutely. I got an advanced copy of the book, so it hasn't been sort of condensed down into proper book form, which means that it turns out into being, it's like a brick. Like this manuscript is this huge. It's like it's like receiving a ream of A4 paper, which is kind of bound together. And it's like I was slightly intimidated by it, but I actually flicked through it, and it feels a bit like it's a story, but it's also like a manual, and it's also like a toolbox at the same time. If that makes sense.
Yes. The intention was to give people something to work with as opposed to just theory.
Yes, exactly. But I think to go back to the point that you made around culture, what actually drives performance and profitability. I mean, right at the beginning of the book, you talk about numbers. You talk about the numbers that we're dealing with, and the sort of the numbers that you've seen through Propellernet as part of this process of being super engaged, and you talk. There's a section which talks about super engaged in numbers. I mean, can you tell us about that? Because then it gives us a flavour of almost the quantum that we're talking about. It's almost, do this, you can possibly get this.
Absolutely. Well, if we look at the global effect of what we're talking about, Gallup do a survey and they recently updated it around engagement at work. Mm-hmm. And globally, of the working population, only 30% of people on this planet are engaged in their jobs. Mm-hmm. That means the other 70% have left their ingenuity at home, probably not bringing their full selves to work, possibly just turning up, hoping not to get fired. What a waste of our collective human intelligence is that, and how bad is it for business?
Sure.
We've got some big problems to solve on this planet. We need the ingenuity of everybody to be fully engaged to do so. Mm-hmm. How brilliantly could we be doing if that other 70% were engaged? So I spent quite a lot of time looking at how we can change that statistic, that 30%, and that Propellernet, we flipped it against the backdrop of 30% engagement globally. 90% of my team are engaged or super engaged. Even, when business is hard or when things are challenging or clients are demanding, however we're looking at it, our team are engaged in what they're doing. And what that means is it shows up in the other numbers and metrics that help run a business. So our staff turnover rate is less than 7%. The industry average, according to the latest IPA report, is over 30%.
Right.
So we're taking a lot of waste out of the system. We're not wasting time on recruiting constantly and interviewing constantly, although I do talk to people on a regular basis who may want to work in the agency, and we're not losing all that knowledge out of the business at our rate 3 times faster than we need to. So we're saving there. We average a day of sick a year. The average in the industry is between 5 and 12 days, depending on what report you look at. And that has a direct impact, obviously, on the ability for us to do our work, but also the need for freelancers to come in and the well-being impact on others. Mm-hmm. We can plan around planned absence and workload. What's really difficult is if people are constantly phoning in sick because they're stressed with their job and they can't face it, it has a negative impact on their team around them. It doesn't necessarily impact the board or management or the owners. It's the team around them, and that has a negative impact, and it just rolls on. It's like a domino effect.
Sure.
So we're not having that either. 1 day per person is more than manageable. And 98% of our team would recommend working at Propellernet to others, and they actively do, which means we rarely need to engage with recruitment consultants where we do want to recruit. And recruitment consultants are great, but if we don't need to engage with them, we don't need to pay their commissions, which is brilliant. So again, a saving. And all of these kind of numbers have a big impact on the bottom line.
Perfect. I mean, but then you also, right at the very beginning of that, I mean, so first of all, thank you for that. I mean, that gives us shows you kind of how far you've moved the needle, as it were, to use a sort of a metaphor. But but you also mentioned this idea about being not just engaged, but super engaged. I mean, what's the difference between being engaged and super engaged? What does it mean to be super engaged?
It almost transcends work feeling like work. You're so involved in what you're doing. It's how you feel when you've got a hobby that you do a lot. And it sort of changes that balance of, we talk about work-life balance. And that gets very blurred. It's almost like a work-life continuum.
Right.
And the things that, for Propellernet, means people are super engaged, and this differs by different organisations. Virgin Atlantic will have very different points of engagement to MI5. The reason you turn up to those businesses are very, very different. So for us, engagement is knowing the organisation cares for you and is doing the utmost to ensure your emotional and psychological well-being is taken care of.
Mm-hmm.
Having complete faith in the organisation is telling the truth, and we're faithful to our principles, which are very deeply aligned in the way we run the business. And everyone feels genuinely challenged. Engagement isn't just about being nice to people, although that's great. It's about challenging them to be the best version of themselves with the appropriate training and support, so they have a clear sense of how they'll progress. So, it's that psychological well-being, the fact that the truth is there, and people feel challenged.
Right. Okay. I mean, you mentioned that there's this idea of like work-life can balance and stuff, and I actually thought. I mean, I read a piece years ago from Seth Godin, if you're familiar with him, and
yes.
And he turned around and he said he was away on holiday, or he was away traveling somewhere, and for some reason he couldn't. I think this is right. He couldn't sleep, and he was up around about 3-4 in the morning, and I think his wife was asleep, and he thought, well, actually, I'm just going to go and take my laptop and sit down in the lobby of the hotel, and I'm going to just either read the news or maybe do a couple of emails or whatever. So apparently then there was this kind of couple that came in, being out on the town, and they looked over him, and it was almost a bit like they sort of tutted and went, oh, look at him, can't kind of drag himself away from work, sort of thing, blah, 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 blah. And he made the point that it was like, it's interesting when we talk about work-life balance, but when people talk about going on holiday and then getting away from things. Mm-hmm. And he said that sort of idea about balance, he says, I'm not sure that necessarily works, particularly if you do something that you enjoy, and it's more about getting the right sort of blend.
Yes,
because actually,
I completely agree with that.
If you do something that you really enjoy, then why should you switch on and off? I mean, yes, switching on and off is a good thing, but actually, it's about getting the right, not just the right balance, but also the right blend as well. So it becomes a bigger part of your work. Isn't just a thing that you do, but it becomes a thing that contributes to your life.
Yes, he speaks a lot of sense, Seth.
Yes, he does. Anyway, but when I went through the book, what was interesting is that this stuff doesn't, or achieving these sort of numbers and achieving this sort of state. One, it's always a work in progress, but it's also been a journey to reach this kind of point. And I think we sort of learn just as much from some of the potholes, and when things haven't gone well, as much as we do from when things go right. I mean, so can you tell us about some of the rough times that you've gone through, like say maybe something that you've thought, oh, that'd be a good idea, we should try that, and then it's just kind of not gone the way that you expected. Because then it has a bit of a reality, because there is a possibility that a lot of people, when they write books like this, and it's a lot of it can feel slightly aspirational. There needs to be quite a lot, I think, a degree of truth in it, going like, this is hard work, people. And if you're not willing to put your shoulder into it, then it's you're not going to achieve it, because it's not going to be all plain sailing.
Yes. Absolutely. There's some comedy moments we've had where we aim to make life better in our community, and we work with Brighton Housing Trust, and we try to do quite a lot of things to help raise money for Brighton Housing Trust. Yeah. And another part of our business, we've taken some of our capital and we've invested it in doing up properties to sell and offering those properties to our team, because our team are finding it really hard to get on the property ladder. Okay. So when we had one of these properties, we thought, why don't we throw a party in it before we do it up? Invite loads of people down, charge them entry fee, get a massive speaker system, get local bands in, and have put on a big show to raise some money for Brighton Housing Trust. So it came from a really good place of wanting to fundraise and use one of the assets we had to our best of our ability. And it wasn't until one of our boards spoke to the council about it, and they said, you absolutely cannot do a huge house party, ticketed event with a bar unless one of you wants to go down. Okay, we probably shouldn't be doing that kind of thing.
Meaning going to jail.
Yes, that's kind of not worth that. But we've got so caught up in our own excitement of how we could make life better for Brighton Housing Trust and how we could use our own assets and not worry about anybody else, that we just got completely carried away. And we needed a bit of a sense check to say, actually, let's be sensible about this. And sometimes it's when your culture is very much about saying yes
Yeah.
very much about involving everybody's ideas. That kind of thing can happen. You need to come back to what can be real sometimes. Push the boundaries, but come back to what's real.
Perfect. So the other things I wanted to talk about, I mean, there's some just key ideas in there and in the book, and what I want to do is just kind of almost explore a couple of them with you, because one, we don't want to talk about the whole book, because you obviously want people to go off and grab their own copy, but I wanted to sort of touch on some of the really standout ideas for me, which I thought, that's unusual. Tell me more about that. And the first one that came up to me, because you mentioned the sort of people before sort of profit, is the first, one of the things at the top of your totem pole. But the second one is that you've chosen to limit the size of the firm to only 60 people.
Yes.
And I've never heard the 60 number before, and I've heard the 150, the sort of Dunbar number before, but not 60. So why 60?
I've run a number of agencies and worked with a number of agencies of various sizes. My favourite size and favourite journey is between startup size and 80. Because in an agency, you're in a world of communication. You need to be able to communicate with each other. And that kind of size of journey, people still know each other, they understand each other, they know a bit about each other, and you've got a great camaraderie and morale within the business. If you get to over a certain point, things start to break. You get more operational headaches creeping in. And we thought, you know what, let's not just follow that traditional path, that traditional blueprint of more bums on seats. It's not the only way to grow. Why don't we challenge ourselves and force innovation in our growth and look at how we can grow differently? And a number of people have, the culture thing is very much at the forefront. It's not all about profit. It's not all about driving that figure. It's about what can we do to add a lot more value to our business and our clients and globally our customers. That also works for us, because it's back to that thing about having a work-life continuum. It should all feel good. If we just chase the numbers, chase that growth number, we won't necessarily be adding more fun, adding more quality, adding better work. We're possibly adding more operational headaches and no more return for anybody.
Yeah.
I've been challenged a number of times, and one person actually said to me, "You're not ambitious enough." Well, I beg to differ, because in the 21st century, growth is not just about bums on seats. If you're running a future-fit, innovation-focused, people-first business, you should be able to come up with something better than that. And, if we did double the size of the agency, we had double the amount of staff to manage, but not necessarily double all the other benefits. And when you think about this, it really changes the way you run your business. So 3 impacts on the business now. It affects the clients we accept. We develop a phobia of what we call profit vampires, the clients that take more time and attention they pay for, because they're detracting from other clients, and actually you don't do your best work in that way.
Sure.
It affects who you hire, and someone leaves, you don't automatically replace that role. Instead, you have when you have a strategic break on the numbers, you critically evaluate every single hire. Each one is an opportunity to shape the future of the agency. Now, I know from agency experience that doesn't happen every time. If someone leaves a particular team, you tend to replace that person because you've got work that they are doing around that area. What we try to think of is, what next? Where are we going? What should it look like? And it's an opportunity for change, which is great. And it also means we can't afford passengers. And everybody knows there are only 60 seats in the agency. We talk about 60 precious seats, and we have conversations about what we've done each week to earn our seats.
Right.
And it's a very open conversation. I ask people, and they are very open in asking me. It makes it clear what our expectations are in the language we use, and it takes everyone has that responsibility to move the business forward.
Yeah.
So it makes the business more effective and efficient, because there is nowhere to hide, and it is not done for that reason. It's done to generate innovation in our growth, but these are almost the side benefits of saying we're going to stay at a particular size. But on top of that, and this is what we're really looking for, is that innovation.
Yes.
It's forced us to think strategically about how we can develop technology products that solve problems in our business and scratch our own itch, knowing that if we can do that for us, we can potentially solve problems for other agencies too, and that's where the value lies, that's where the growth is. An example of this is Coverage Book, which is a product that we've developed and is now on global.
Yes.
30% of the agency is made up of PR people.
Yes.
And asking people how we could improve, what we could do better. The majority of them said, if only we could automate the creation of coverage books, that would make life better for everyone. You know what coverage books are in PR? You used to be snipping pages out of newspapers and putting them into a book. It's now snipping pages out of the web and pasting it into PowerPoint, and it's relatively soul destroying. It's great high value for a client to see what their coverage is, but then you have to go and manually get all of the metrics behind it, so the coverage, the reach, the likes, etc. Mm-hmm. And Gary, our tech director, took a challenge on to develop a technology product, and over the last 3 years, self-funded from ourselves, we haven't had any external investment, we've developed a tool that automates the production of coverage books. Not only that, it provides all the reach and coverage metrics automatically too. So it's taken 90% of the time out of doing that task, meaning our people are free to think more strategically instead of doing something very admin focused.
Right.
If that released that amount of time for our team, it can do it for other agencies. So we've now developed coveragebook.com as a SaaS business. It's reimagined PR reporting in the 21st century, and it's gone global. It's selling in over 4,000 cities around the world, and it's going to make more money than the 60 seats in the agency this year. So it's a very different dynamic and different way of making money and forcing innovation in our growth without just growing to 120 people. And that's the kind of innovation we're looking for. And we've got a number of these ideas lined up.
Perfect. I mean, I think that what it really illustrates is that actually, if you choose, there's that old saying, necessity is the mother of all invention.
Absolutely.
And so necessity is like necessity is about constraints, right? And what people don't conveniently forget sometimes is that you can choose your constraints sometimes. Constraints aren't necessarily imposed on you by external forces. You can impose them on yourself. And what you've done is gone, it's 60 because it's a nice sort of size. We're in communications. It's the right sort of thing. That will then force us to think differently about it. And I love the idea about coverage book. And then you've done a bunch of other things. And I know there's a whole bunch of things in the pipeline. But it just shows that you can be creative with all sorts of different things, and you can create value and growth and innovation. And bigger doesn't mean better. And I love that.
No. And following the path of others sometimes is great, but we want to craft our own path and have our own journey, and we're very, very much enjoying doing that, enjoying the challenge of it too.
Yeah. So then going back to the people thing, the thing I wanted to ask about is, tell me about the Dream Ball machine, because it feels like a game that you play that you get gobstoppers out of.
This genius idea came from Jack, our CEO, who is really out there when it comes to ideas. And we are deadly serious about making dreams come true and having our own Dream Ball machine and building the team's dreams into our business plan. And it has a real fundamental business impact. It sounds frivolous, but as I talk it through, the business impact will come through too. So, just that you take a minute to think of something you dream of doing, someone you dream of meeting, or someone you dream of going or achieving. And wouldn't it be wonderful if your employer could help you achieve it, or you could help your employees achieve their dreams? Mm-hmm. It's a concept that we don't normally think about. And when we talk about it in a business, particularly for new people, they find it a bit odd. But once you start to embrace it, it really makes a lot of sense. So the Dream Ball machine is an old-fashioned sweet dispenser. It's about 5 foot high with a glass dome at the top. And in that
it is an old gobstopper sort of ball type of thing.
It is exactly that.
Fantastic.
Yes. And inside those capsules, like those you get in Kinder Egg, the names of each person in the agency. And if we hit a target, or we win an award, or just because it's sunny, because there's no rules around dreams, we aim to release a dream ball and make that person's dream come true. And how do we know what their dreams are? Well, one of the reasons I love my job is that I have a dream consultation with everyone when they pass their probation. And I ask them 2 questions. Firstly, what they're going to do to improve the agency and earn their seat. Mm-hmm. And secondly, if that happens and we are really successful, what can we do to make one of their dreams come true? And I've done quite a lot of research around dreams. We apparently have around 100 things whizzing around in our heads of places we want to go, people want to meet, things we dream of achieving. Mm-hmm. And it's healthy to think about those because they push us out of our comfort zone and into a bigger reality. So 6 years ago, when we won our first Great Places to Work award, it was such a huge milestone. We pulled out 2 dream balls, and Jill and Steve wanted to go to the World Cup in Rio. They had loads of other dreams that they wanted to do, but that was a biggie for them. And they wanted to go on travel adventures, have experiences they hadn't had before. So they wanted that since they were knee high to a grasshopper. Can you imagine the feeling they had when their company made that come true for them? Mm-hmm. And it isn't always about money. You do need money to make these things happen, but it doesn't have to be really expensive. We work with travel clients. We can get some great deals on flights, etc.
Sure.
All we really need to do is give them a bit of extra time off. Eshe is a prolific food blogger, and she wanted to make her dream of a travelling kitchen to work with celebrity chefs come to life.
Right.
So when her dream board came out, we helped her transform an old school caravan into Eshe's kitchen. And a few months ago, she started working with the Hairy Bikers on a series of programmes. And I've got loads of these examples of people's dreams. But the thing is, and this is where it comes back to the business hard-nosed side of it, it's not about waiting for your dream board to drop. And we talk about this a lot. Sometimes people's ideas are so compelling, they become part of our business plan.
Right.
So I'll give you a couple of examples. Sophie is our audience strategy director. She's a brilliant thinker, and she's an animal lover, and she wanted to go on safari and be with some big animals. So we didn't have a safari client at the time, and it wasn't on our radar of how we were going to get Sophie out there, but we got in touch with Wild Dog Safaris, and they wanted to work with us to support them on their marketing. They're based in Namibia, but they didn't really have any money. So rather than say no to them, Sophie went out and spent her sabbatical in Namibia with Wild Dog, and she came back with a business plan. And we now do marketing for them, and they pay us in free safaris.
Right.
You can imagine how that's gone down in the business. And it's not a commercial contract, it's a social contract. And my God, the engagement levels of the team who are learning about ecotourism and learning how to build a website for a client that doesn't have enough money to do it for themselves. They're learning so much that they can apply to other clients, and they're really enjoying that part of the business. So it's you've got to think wider on what kind of impact these can have.
Yeah.
Just another example. Dan is one of our tech SEO consultants, and he wanted to get more into making and building things. So we gave him the time to do that. And Dan came up with a brilliant tool called answerthepublic.com, which is used by PR and content industry to understand what people are looking for when they're searching online. It's like a supercharged Google.
Yes.
You can put what you are looking to promote into this search engine, in effect, and it will show you all the searches that come back. So say if you put snowboarding in, it will show you what everybody was talking about in relation to snowboarding, and then you can write content around that, and you can answer those people's questions. You can be found online and put your brand in front of people that want to engage because you've answered what they need online. That tool is now being used by 140,000 people around the world, and it's on a growth path to become bigger than Coverage Book. And if we hadn't have asked, we would never have known, and Dan wouldn't have had his dream come true of making and building things, and we wouldn't have been able to make life better in such a great way in the PR and content marketing industry. So these things, can be monetized, or they can be social contracts, but they all add to the value of the business.
And the value of the business, but also kind of the motivation and inspiration and engagement of the people and stuff as well. And that just it becomes a systemic thing, right?
Yes.
So everything is all kind of like supercharged, but all pushing in the right direction, but also in their own directions. But then it's trying to figure out how all those things map together and help each other.
Yes.
Perfect.
And when someone says, "I'd love to do this," and you go, "Okay, then let's make it part of the business." It doesn't happen very often. And people are so surprised. It's that point of engagement is huge. I'm not saying it's perfect all the time, but it's a definite step up from just do your job.
Well, exactly. And I think also the other thing to do is, I've spoken to other people about this sort of stuff before, and the challenge with many traditional organisations is that they will look at some of these things that you've done or things that you're doing, and they go, "Oh, that's a good idea. We'll do that," and it becomes like an initiative.
Yes.
And then it becomes an initiative that just kind of gets done, but it doesn't actually affect anything because it's just a thing. And they wonder why it doesn't work. But because what you're doing it always becomes natural extensions of what you do and how you are. And I think that's the big challenge. It's like, it's not about doing more. You can change the way you are by doing more stuff, because that's just a learning process. But actually, if you're just going to do things as initiatives and think that's going to change who you are, then you've got the wrong idea.
It's got to fundamentally work within your strategy.
Yeah.
And your strategy needs to lead with this kind of thinking in mind.
Yes.
The two have to go hand in hand. You're right. It can't just be a bolt-on.
Yeah. So, Nikki, let me kind of reset back to sort of zero, particularly for me and my blog and the podcast and my sort of, I feel like, groove, because I'm interested in service experience and also in engagement. But I wanted to ask you how all of the things that you do and how you are as a business and how your people are and things, how is that fed through into client service, satisfaction, retention, referral rates, all that type of stuff? Just to sort of dig into that a little bit.
Yes, I fundamentally believe that client satisfaction starts with employee engagement.
Right.
Because happier, engaged people do better work than miserable, unengaged people. It's not rocket science, but it's rarely factored into the business plan.
Sure.
Engaged people will build stronger relationships with clients, have a longer tenure with you, and clients tend not to like too much staff turnover. They'll develop great working results. And as such, our client retention rate is up in the 90s. Our client satisfaction scores are around 95%. And we get the majority of our new business from referrals. So it's a virtuous spiral upwards. And I've seen it time and time again. If people aren't happy and your staff turnover is high, your clients don't enjoy their experience with you. This is about relationships.
Sure.
And relationships start with people who engage with each other.
Absolutely. And the other thing, a nuance in that, in all of that is that I noticed also that you make all of your people client-facing. And is that more, because I know that in many agencies and in other sort of kind of firms, particularly if they're technology related, some people don't actually let any of the more technical people near the clients. And I just wanted to understand kind of your thinking behind sort of that. And is that just because it's the philosophy of it, or is it about building skills and aptitude, or do you pick people that are going to that have the right sort of skills, but also client-facing skills? Or tell me the thinking about that.
Everybody needs to earn their seat at Propellernet. It goes back to the strategic lever of pressure seats. So because we are all accountable for the success of the business, it makes sense to enable the experts in each area, so strategy, creative, tech, PR, media, to talk to the experts within the client business.
Right.
The people closest to the information can then make decisions, and we empower them to explain those decisions to clients. It's a way of working that encourages responsibility, accountability, and engagement, and there's no client services person to hide behind. I've been that client services person that other people hide behind, and it's no fun. For that client services person, if things aren't going well, it is not very engaging at all. So you tend to find more open responsibility when everybody can talk to everybody. And, we're all human at the end of the day.
Yeah.
We should all be able to have conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and the other thing that I was kind of thinking about with all of this stuff, so you make all your people client-facing, it's, clients tend to sort of, people engage, clients enjoy kind of like working with you. But the thing that then I was left thinking about is, what does actually management and leadership then look like at Propellernet? Because it feels like you're not a standard traditional hierarchical organization. And therefore I wanted to sort of understand, does that mean that management and leadership have got to be different and operate in a sort of different way?
It's really interesting, and it's something we are constantly working on. The key thing is, and I say this word a lot, we're very human in our approach. And what does that mean? Well, we have very little hierarchy. It's not a flat structure. Therein lies madness, I believe.
Sure.
And it's not the fact that there's little hierarchy. Everybody's accessible. No one is worried about getting involved and supporting a new idea. No one has an office. No one blocks themselves off. Everyone has the same rights and privileges with the business. We're all treated very, very similarly and the same. And, that kind of structure is brilliant for people to thrive because no one is cut off from each other. Everyone can see what everyone is doing.
Yeah.
What a relatively flat hierarchy can do, or a hierarchy-like environment can mean, is that traditional progression doesn't happen in the same way.
Yes.
And that can be a real challenge for people who want to get, I want the next rung on my career ladder. But I have conversations with people who say, I love the fact that there's hardly any hierarchy. What's my next step up? Oh, okay, so you need a career ladder, but you want a relatively flat hierarchy, because it's quite a challenge. So instead of a ladder, we offer a climbing frame where people can develop in different ways and not have a set career path. And it doesn't work for everybody. Some people absolutely want every 6 to 12 to 18 months to get a new title, and I understand that. What we're more interested in is how we can grow across what we do, how we can think differently, how potentially someone can bring a new business idea into the business and become part of a startup. And we've done it a number of times. So you can work within the security of our business, but be part of a startup too. That doesn't happen very often in a traditional structure.
Right.
And we've got, very new businesses in our business that we never expected before. We've also got people saying, actually, I think I should be pushing into this area and developing this part of our business. So we've got new areas coming from our team. They never existed in a hierarchy before, but they're new parts of our business, and everyone has the opportunity to develop in that way. It's a very self-directed way of developing. You can go the traditional route, but not at the same number of changes as you would potentially get in another agency. Previous places I've been, with 14 levels in client services, we don't have that.
Right.
What we do have is a climbing frame and the freedom to go in different directions.
But there is a level of hierarchy which will be to do with responsibility and authority around certain things, I would imagine. But you're kind of they're there to support. You're there to support people to do. I guess that if it's very self-directed, then there's a lot of responsibility at the individual level. I guess that's the point, is that people have to, like you say, earn their seat or earn their feet.
Yes.
And so it's all the responsibility falls on the individual and not necessarily just on the manager or the leadership.
Yes. Which is great because it's a very grown-up environment. And what I'm looking to do to help develop that is we have traditional line management and very hierarchy-like. But what I want to do is move to a more coaching environment.
Right.
Where instead of a line manager, people working into a project director for client work and a coach for personal development. I believe everybody in a high-performance team should have the chance to improve. It's what happens in every sport team. Mm-hmm. The England team, when they came back to the World Cup, talked about the fact that their coach changed the way they thought about what they were doing, mm-hmm. which profoundly impacted how they felt, which profoundly impacted their performance. When journalists asked them, were you nervous? Said, no, we're excited. They just changed their language slightly and changed their whole physiology and how they performed. I'd like to get to that within our business, and we're moving to a more coaching-based model, again, very self-directed in its approach, mm-hmm. for people to develop and grow at their pace and push themselves.
Perfect. So I hope those questions, I don't want to kind of keep going on and to keep digging in, because, we'll just end up talking about the whole book, Nikki, and I know that's kind of like... That's not the point of writing a book. Well, maybe it is. We just give it away for free. But that's that's one model. But actually, you're here to sort of to promote the book as it stands. But I hope the questions that we talked about give people a sense of what you're doing at Propellernet, how it's different, the results that you've achieved, and some of some of the things that you folded into your culture and the way of doing things, and how that makes sense for you. So, but there's so much more in the book, and so many more ideas, so many more detailed more detail around kind of what you've done and how you've done it. So I hope that has been helpful. But if I was to say to you, say there's somebody that's listening to this, and they are maybe running their own firm or their own division, and they're thinking about changing their own company's purpose and culture, put the people sort of first, and they're getting inspired by some of the things that you're doing. As you say, it's a journey. But if I were to ask you to say what would be the best bit of advice you could give them in order to help them take the first step on that journey, what would it be?
I would get a laser focus on where they are today. So listen, ask questions, and find out about how people feel about the organisation.
Right.
And a great question to ask is whether or not they would recommend it to others. Our personal reputations are at stake if we make a recommendation, and it can tell you a lot about how people feel. Mm-hmm. Lots of people ask us about their products and services. It's that recommendation question on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being low and 10 being high. How likely would you be to recommend working at this company to others?
Yeah.
And you'll get scores back, and those scores will tell you an awful lot. And if you want to apply the Net Promoter Score approach, anyone who scores 6 or under is detracting for your business. 7 or 8 is passive or neutral. 9 or 10 is someone who's promoting it. And look at the proportion of promoters,
sure,
and see what it tells you and what it means for you.
Perfect. It's a good place to start, and it's a real honest mirror, I guess, to hold up. So, Nikki, before I ask you my final question, I always ask at the end of these interviews, is there anything that you'd like to add that we've missed out before I ask you the final question?
I often get asked, from an employee engagement perspective, is it fluffy? What are the hard metrics? I hope that we can show there are hard metrics behind this. And if you do this with your teams, as a leader, you will have a better life too. It's a really compelling thing to think about, and it's a really compelling thing to do. And the positivity around it just lifts everybody that's involved. So if anyone's worried about doing it, think a little bit selfishly about, this will change your life too. It's not that hard conceptually to think about. It's relatively hard to do that first step. But once you get a bit of insight into how people are feeling, you will work out what needs to happen next. And if you want a bit fewer tips, the book has got hundreds in there.
Perfect, thank you. So that brings me to my final question. I always ask at the end of these interviews, Nikki, and that is there anything that you would like to shamelessly plug?
Well, the book is out in October.
Mm-hmm.
There is a website which is www.superengaged.co.uk, or just Google Superengaged and it'll come up.
Mm-hmm.
And if you sign up there, you can get a bit of a pre-read, and the discount code will be coming out before the book is launched, so you can get a bit of a discount and when you want to go and have a look at it on Amazon.
Perfect. I will make sure I get all that kind of linked up, and when I do the write-up and things. But I just want to say, first of all, Nikki, congratulations on the success that you and everybody's at Propellernet have had. You are a business that is local to me and is fondly talked about by many, many people. So I just want to congratulate on that success. I want to also congratulate you on the book, and then thank you for sharing your time and your experience with us today. That's been awesome.
You're very welcome. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you.
Well, that's it for another interview. I really hope you enjoyed it. Now, every time I complete one of these interviews, I learn something new, and I try and incorporate that new learning into my writing, my speaking, my workshops, and the consulting that I do for my clients. If you're interested, you can find out more about how I work with clients over at adrianswinscoe.com. But one final thing before I go, please consider heading over to iTunes or whichever podcast platform you choose to use, and do leave a review. Every little helps, as they say. Anyway, that's all for now. Thank you for listening, and do listen in again. All the very best.